It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump. Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark, 11-yard touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
The greatest, most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible.
Listen to me, I'm older and I'm wise.
Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you've said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
Y'all ready for this?
Thank God it's...
It's Friday, gotta get down on Friday.
It's Friday, and we head into a sports weekend with the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump, along with Adam Lundy. I am live on location out here at Parkview Field. It is opening night for TinCaps baseball. Adam Lundy in the studio, back on Maples Road. Coming up this hour, we'll be talking with Mike Maahs. Yes, the legend himself, Mike Maahs. He'll be joining us coming up at about the bottom of the hour. We'll talk some TinCaps history and memories of opening days gone by for Mike Maahs. And we'll also talk about his medical emergency that he had today, because Mike Maahs was listed on the injury report. And he was questionable this morning, but became probable this afternoon. And now it does look like he is a full go for the broadcast tonight. And that's good news, but we'll tell you what happened with Mike Maahs if he's willing to share. Coming up here this hour. Big sports weekend on the way. Not only do we have TinCaps baseball here at Parkview Field, but also it's the Final Four. For the men and the women. The women actually get started tonight with the Final Four. Texas, South Carolina, with the Gamecocks 5.5-point favorites over Texas. And you've got UCLA, UConn with the Huskies, a 7.5-point favorite over UCLA. Now, I'll tell you what, it's been a nice run for UConn, and they've played their best basketball, and Paige Beckers has been incredible during this tournament run. But I find it hard to imagine that UConn is going to beat UCLA by 7.5. I just don't see it happening. Now, I could have egg on my face, but by Monday you'll forget, because coming up tomorrow, you've got the men's Final Four with Florida, Auburn starting it off. That'll be Florida as a 2.5-point favorite over Auburn. I like Auburn to win the game. Now, I know if you look at my bracket, or should I say brackets, I've got 3 teams picked to win the national title, and the majority of the brackets had Florida and Auburn, because I always say that I start at the end and work my way back, and I couldn't decide between Florida and Auburn which one I had more confidence in winning the championship. And so I've got almost an even split between Florida and Auburn, and then I've got Duke on, I think, 2 of my brackets. Now, remember, I got like 10 brackets. So I think I got like 4 or 5 that have Auburn, 3 or 4 have Florida, 2 have Duke. Those are the only 3 teams I picked to win the title on the 10 brackets I did. I stopped at 10. But anyway, I've got... I'd take Auburn with points, and I said this on the show yesterday, that, you know, that game is going to be one of those games that's an absolute dogfight throughout, and I think anybody is going to have a lot of trouble getting any kind of separation against the other. And so I would just naturally take the team that's getting points. Regardless of who you think is going to win the game, take the team that gets the points. And so I would take Auburn getting 2.5 against Florida, and then Duke 5.5 over Houston. And I actually feel like Duke would be my bet. Now, I know that counters what I said yesterday about Ken Palm, and the Ken Palm was picking this game as only like a 2 or 3 point game, and so there was value in taking Houston. But I like offense, and I think offense always rules. And I think if Duke is ahead by 2 or 3 points down the stretch and you start to get into a foul game, that's why I like the over, because I do think the game will be close enough that it might force one of the teams to foul, and you might get 6 or 8 extra points out of the last minute because of fouling. And that helps to drive the over. The over-under number's not that high. So I think on that game, I like the over maybe better than taking Duke and giving the points. But I do not like Houston at plus 5.5. Not thrilled with that. And Duke, that would be the way if I had to pick on the spread. But that's one of those games that if I think Duke's going to win, I might go in and check out the odds on an alternate spread and make it more like 2.5 or 3.5 and maybe take Duke. But, Adam, you're going to be locked in the recliner. I know you've got dog duty, so, you're going to be stuck there at home. You might as well watch some basketball tomorrow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And I don't really have any thoughts about the lines or the spreads or anything. All I know is I'm planning on a Auburn versus Duke championship. So I've got Duke beating Houston, and I've got Auburn getting the win over Florida. I know a lot of people think that Florida just has the offensive power to get past Auburn, but I feel like it all depends on, one really good player for Florida, whereas Auburn is a very more spread out team talent-wise. And as far as Duke goes, I think that just the Duke scoring will outscore the Houston defense. So that's what I've got looking forward to tomorrow.
By the way, I don't know if we've got any updates. If you've been watching the portal, do we know any updates from the portal today?
Nothing major that I've heard of as of right now, but I will keep an eye on the transfer portal and let you know if anything else comes up.
It's amazing because just when I think nothing's happening, all of a sudden something seems to pop up. And
sure.
So I've been trying to, and of course it's just as active with women's basketball as it is with men's basketball.
Oh yeah.
And you're talking about teams like IU and Notre Dame who have significant activity going on with the portal. Some coming, some going. You've got Purdue Fort Wayne who. They've got, 8 or 9 spots. Now I think they've got about 3 or 4 spots open for portal additions because they do have some incoming freshmen and all. But there's certainly some opportunities there. But I'm just kind of scrolling through myself to see if there's any new updates on portal information. Of course, the news we did get is that Josh Dix, an Indiana target, who Indiana was very high on, according to the reports I was seeing out of Bloomington. Josh Dix committed to Creighton. And a lot of people down in Bloomington thought that Josh Dix was a lock to go to Bloomington and to play for Coach DeVries. But he ends up staying nearby and goes to Omaha to play for Creighton as he leaves Iowa and takes the short drive over to Omaha. But, it's one of those things where I think from a profile standpoint, yes, he would be a perfect fit for IU. I also think with IU going after Conwell, going after Dix, not getting either one, that's a little bit of a concern. And you can have different reasons for every player. And I understand every player has their own their own motivation and their own criteria of what they're looking for in the next program. But Indiana, all we keep hearing, nobody can outspend Indiana. Their NIL is really fat, and to not get those guys, plus Flory Badunga, who came in for a visit, still hasn't made a commitment yet, so he didn't jump on the chance to play for the Hoosiers. That might be a concern since he played his high school ball at Kokomo. But there are portal stories. But, Adam, how concerned should Indiana be over their state of where they're at with transfers so far? Is there any level of concern? And if you had to measure it on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being pure panic and 1 no sweat at all, where are you at?
Well, I think you can be disappointed in the fact that IU didn't get these guys, but I think you can also let that not completely make you hit the panic button. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would only maybe put it at like a 2 or a 3. There are still a lot of quality guys out there in the transfer portal. There's still a lot of time to make additions to the program. I think it's, it gets a little bit overblown when you have, what people consider, these marquee guys coming in just to start. and it goes somewhere else, it is a bad look. But at the same time, I don't think it's time to hit the panic button quite yet. I think we can maybe give it, another week or two, see what kind of guys, IU keeps looking at, who IU adds to DeVries' roster. But like I said, I'm not super concerned. You would have liked to see those guys there in Indiana, but at the same time, there's still time to construct a roster, in my opinion. What about you?
One of the concerns I would have at this point is the fact that Indiana has a full roster to fill. They've got a new coach coming in, and that means they've got a full roster of spots. They can't afford too many misses. I mean, if you're going to go one for every 5 or 6 people that visit, and you've got 13 spots to fill on a roster, how many people are going to have to come through Bloomington before you finally get a full roster? And are you going to have the talent that you want? I think these guys were high on the list for Indiana. I think they've done some due diligence and thought these are guys that we would like to see become Hoosiers. That's why they visited. That's why they were invited on campus. And it's not money. And therefore, there's another reason why these players are not choosing Bloomington. Is it the style of Darian DeVries? Is it the expectations? Is it the fact that they feel with Tucker DeVries already being there that they're not going to be the go-to guy, or they're not satisfied with what role they would have in the Indiana offense? I'm not sure. But if I had to give it a 1 to 10, I think my level of concern is at least a 4 or 5, because I just don't like the optics of it. The fact that you do have a full roster that's open, and you do have a ton of money, and you do have a new coach. I think it's a little bit concerning at this point. I'm not pressing the panic button, but I do think it's concerning that you haven't gotten somebody lined up out of this first wave, other than the Connor Enright kid, who we almost knew was a lock to go to Indiana, and Tucker DeVries was a guarantee. I mean, there was no way Tucker DeVries was going anywhere besides with his father. So you hired one recruit into town, and the other one just happens to tag along and play with Coach DeVries. Other than that, you don't have anyone. And that's a little concerning. Everybody else who had no connections chose to go connect with somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm going to give it another week or two, see if they can bring anybody in before I bring it up to anything past a 5 on the 1 to 10 scale. But it is it's planting a seed of concern here in the starts of the program, I would say.
Now let's talk about what Indiana really needs to add to this roster. They didn't get these guys, but what they do have to find, number one, they've got to get bigs. They don't have any posts or bigs on the roster, so they got to find bigs. And the question is, what type of a big are they looking for? Are they looking for that 6'9" versatile 4-5 type guy, a guy who can stretch the defense, who can step out and hit the pick and pop from 3? Are they looking at more of a true space eater down low where he can post up back to the basket? But they've got to find somebody that can play against another team's 5-man. And right now they don't have that guy on the roster. They have to have somebody that occupies some space, because I think you've got to have an inside game to balance with Tucker DeVries, but you also have have to have shooters that can open up floor space for Tucker DeVries, because DeVries is going to be a star, and the more you can support him with the complement of players around him, the better Indiana is going to become. But I think they've got to find some shooters somewhere. And like I said, I thought 2 proven high-level talents, guys that have played well at this level in Conwell and Dix, and not getting either one, little bit concerning. 260-447-8500. Give us your thoughts on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. It's 260-447-8500. Plenty more happening right now here at Parkview Field. It's Lansing on the field taking their batting practice. And, of course, tonight, the TinCaps and the Lansing Lugnuts. By the way, the skies are a little bit brighter, and I hate to jinx anything, because we've been talking about how the forecast hasn't looked all that good and how it looks like there's a better chance of rain than not. But right now, things are somewhat encouraging and optimistic. If you just look around the sky, it's brightened up a little bit. The radar does not look as threatening as it did a couple of hours ago. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hope that we can get game one in of this 2025 season with Fort Wayne TinCaps. We're going to take a timeout. We're going to come back. Plenty more still ahead, broadcasting live here at Parkview Field ahead of the TinCaps opening night on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Adam Lundy back in the 1380 The Fan studios. I am Brett Rump. Broadcasting live from Parkview Field where, the sun is shining. I don't know if I can say that out loud, but if you just look right now, I think you can actually say that the sun is shining. There's a shadow. But you're going to enjoy the ballpark tonight. The lights, the new lighting system, Mike Nutter was talking about it in our first hour. You've got the LED lighting, and, of course, when they hit home runs, you can flash the lights on and off and give it more of a celebratory feel when the TinCaps hit a home run, especially if they hit a game winner. That just adds to the atmosphere and the environment. It's almost like having the fireworks go off when the lights are going on and off, and that's one of the advantages of this LED lighting. But it was like $1 million project to replace the lights. Now, what I'm going to enjoy is the fact that at the wall, you're not going to have as many dark spots because it was sometimes tough to see, when they get to the wall, whether or not the ball's caught, if it's off the wall, because it was in a shadow. It was tough to kind of pick up the exact baseball. But now it should be much more fan-friendly. Hopefully it's player-friendly. I know the players are going to have to adjust to these new lights, but it's going to be a brighter ballpark than what we've had in the past. So should be fun down here at Parkview Field. There's tickets available for it tonight, and like I said, right now things look pretty promising. So we'll see. And Manuel Pinales is scheduled to be tonight's starting pitcher. That's a name a lot of TinCaps fans might remember from a year ago. In fact, I think it's a little bit of a surprise that he was here to start the year, but he has been pegged as the opening night starter for the TinCaps. He'll take the mound for a 7:05 first pitch tonight, game one of 132. This year, 66 home games, 66 road games, and you can almost put an asterisk next to that because it sometimes doesn't work out perfectly to 66 because it does depend if there's a rain out, because they will reschedule rainouts in the other team's ballpark if they need to. But right now, the TinCaps hoping to get this one in tonight. And then tomorrow, 1 o'clock is the scheduled first pitch, 1:05. And on Sunday, same time, 1:05 p.m. right here at the ballpark to finish off this season opening 3-game series against the Lugnuts. 260-447-8500, the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. I know, Adam, you're back there in the studio. I'm not sure if we've gotten any new text or anything's happening back in the studio. What kind of buzz we've got for baseball, for TinCaps, for college basketball, the transfer portal. What's going on?
Yeah, just a couple texts so far today. So if you want to weigh in on anything that you just mentioned, feel free to give us a text at 260-447-8500. Whiskers was weighing in. He wanted to know where I was. I let him know that I'm back here in the studio getting ready for TinCaps baseball. Somebody else wanted to let us know that the Cubs beat the San Diego Padres today in Chicago 3-1. So the Cubs are flying the W over there at Wrigley Field.
First loss for the Padres.
Yep. First one there over in Chicago. Somebody else said that put me in cold is a legit line to start the season tonight at Parkview Field. They mentioned how you were kind of had to deal with cold weather and cold starts to the season there. Definitely might be one there tonight at Parkview Field. One other one, somebody just shouted out opening day. They're excited. That was Paul texting in. They're excited.
Yep, we've got the broadcast coming up on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Mike Maahs, who you have heard for many years calling TinCaps baseball, he will be joined this year by Jaden Taylor. We had a chance to visit with Jaden in our first hour. I couldn't keep him on the air too long. He made me sound like a soprano when he was up here talking. How do those guys get born with those types of voices? I always wanted that type of voice. I don't have that type of voice, but and the thing is, if you try to fake it, it sounds terrible. So, but he'll be on the call tonight. He does have one of those voices that just sounds like a baseball announcer.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
a real smooth tone. It's kind of deep, but not too deep. And just he'll be a pleasure to listen to, I'm sure, all season long here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Of course, coming up tonight, women's basketball, Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, and UConn. And, I'll ask you, Adam. What do you think? Is it, South Carolina, UConn seems old and stale because those two teams have kind of dominated women's college basketball over what seems like my entire lifetime, but it's really probably more of the 2000s. But, those are the two teams that I think are going to get the overwhelming weight of the bet. And so I do think the line is always going to shift a point or two their direction just because there's money that will follow them because they are South Carolina and UConn. And that's why I'm wondering did some money follow UConn against UCLA? I'm surprised by a 7.5 point line because UCLA is pretty darn good. They've got multiple really talented players and they have a matchup nightmare in the middle with Lauren Betts. I kind of feel like, how does this game get away from UCLA? They've got too many weapons to let this game get away from them. I kind of feel like 7.5 is really stretching it on UConn's side. I'm going UCLA. I'm taking 7.5 points. We'll determine whether that's the smart move or the poor man's move coming up later tonight. But what do you got for tonight, Adam?
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and predict my finals matchup. I think it's going to be South Carolina taking on UCLA. So I'm with you on the UCLA one over UConn, but I think South Carolina does get the win over Texas. But that's what I got.
Does 5.5 points scare you a little bit, though? I mean, I agree with you. South Carolina, I think, will find a way to beat Texas. I would be surprised if Texas wins. But South Carolina has not been super dominant through this run. I mean, they didn't exactly put away Indiana, and I'm like, this Texas team's a lot better than the Indiana Hoosiers, and I think 5.5 would make me a bit nervous if I took South Carolina and had to give Texas 5.5 points. Now, if you pin me against a wall and I had to take one, I think South Carolina is going to win the game, so I probably would tend to think, well, if I think they're going to win and I'm somewhat confident in that, then I probably would have to give the points if I was pushed up and had to make a decision. But 5.5 is a little bit of a scary number. I have no problem taking UCLA if you're giving me 7.5 to take the Bruins. I'll take the Bruins all day, all night with 7.5 points.
Yeah, it's worth noting, looking at the last two games for South Carolina, they've won both of their last two games in the tournament by just 4 points. It was 71-67 over Maryland and then 54-50 over Duke. So definitely been some close games in the last two rounds for the Gamecocks.
The Gamecocks in Indiana stayed fairly close, didn't it? What did that game? That game didn't end up being a huge margin, did it?
That one ended up being an 11-point margin. It was 64-53.
Felt closer than that.
Yeah, I think they pulled away at the
Indiana
end.
was in that game. Yeah, Indiana was in that game for a good portion of it. So I'm a little bit surprised that it ended up being that kind of margin, because I was thinking it was a competitive game. But,
right.
And that's the problem with these games, like I was talking earlier about the men's games, is if you have a team that's holding that 3 or 4 point lead, especially a 4 point lead or a 5 point lead over the last minute, the other team may be forced to foul to try to get back into it. And that's where teams then get the points they need to cover. Until somebody throws in a half-court prayer at the buzzer that seems meaningless, but it breaks everybody's heart. We had that happen last weekend too. But I I would probably go South Carolina. I'd give the 5.5 to Texas, but I'm definitely taking UCLA. All right, news from the portal. Earlier today, Josh Dix announced his commitment, and Hoosiers fans, he's going to Creighton. He did not take Indiana. He opted instead to go play in the Big East. Adam, are you surprised by this?
Not the most surprised I've ever been in my life, but, it's just, a little bit disappointing. I wouldn't say I'm surprised, just, you don't love to see it.
All right, we got to take a break.
Oh, here, I'm going to give you a little bit of transfer news here right before we go to break. Former Purdue Boilermaker Cam Heide has announced his commitment. He is going to play for the Texas Longhorns.
Wow. Well, that didn't take long.
Not at all.
Heidi to the Longhorns. Well, that's interesting. I don't know where Heidi is from.
I don't know either.
But, sometimes you get situations where somebody just wants to get back home, and he's from Minnesota and he's going to Texas.
Yes, sir.
Huh. Well, it didn't take long at all for Cam Heide to find a landing spot. So there you go, Boilermaker fans. Cam Heide is going to be a Longhorn. All right, we'll take a timeout. We're going to come back. Mike Maahs, I think he's just finishing up his second roll of tape, so I think he's ready to talk to us. We'll chat with Mike Maahs and tell you about, his medical day. I said earlier, he was on the questionable list this morning. He was upgraded to probable this afternoon, and now we hear he is a full go for tonight's broadcast. We'll tell you what all that means when we come back here to Parkview Field. It is opening day for the TinCaps. They'll take on the Lansing Lugnuts. And this is the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Talking about the portal earlier, I think I would take what Purdue Fort Wayne has done in the last week, maybe even over what Indiana has done, because Purdue Fort Wayne had to go out and actually find guys, where Tucker DeVries was kind of a gift because he came along with his dad. You almost hired Tucker DeVries by default. And then you had Connor Enright, who clearly had the relationship with Coach DeVries, and so that was almost a given, where, the Mastodons had to go out, try to build relationships rather quickly with two players that filled very significant roles for them after the losses of Eric Mulder and the graduation of Rasheed Bello, the loss in the transfer portal of Jadon Jackson. So I kind of like what the Mastodons have done so far with their use of the portal, and there's still plenty of positions open with Purdue Fort Wayne, and they'll get back to that after the dead period here over the weekend of the Final Four. Of course, coaches are down in San Antonio for coaches meetings, so we won't be hearing too much probably this weekend. But we are here at Parkview Field broadcasting live because tonight it is another opening night for TinCaps baseball. It's always great to know that summer is just around the corner, regardless of the weather we might have tonight or tomorrow, or especially on Sunday when it's supposed to cool down a little bit. But it's always a fun place to be for opening night, and an early opening night, April 4th, and we talked to Mike Nutter about this earlier, but our next guest might be able to verify or shut down any thoughts of how early the TinCaps have played their earliest home game. Mike Nutter said that there was a rumor that it was April 2nd one year, but Mike Maahs, longtime voice of the TinCaps here on radio. And Mike, do you remember the April 2nd opener?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to rack my brain. Usually Mike is dead on and right. I've known him for over 2 decades. But if this isn't the earliest, I would think it'd be the second earliest starting date ever.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say that normally it seems like the TinCaps have been starting historically on the road.
And they also traditionally used to start on a Thursday. But that's not the case anymore since Major League Baseball has taken over the operations of minor league baseball.
Yeah, was there an off day on that opening weekend, so you always had a rain day if you needed it or something like that? Is that what the Thursday, was it like a Thursday, Saturday, Sunday? Is that what it was?
Not really.
No.
The only times that, going back into the yesteryear, if you will, the league never played on Easter Sunday before 2 years ago. And now you play on Easter Sunday, I believe. The TinCaps will be playing. And Memorial Day, where it used to be, for most teams in the league, one of their largest crowds of the season. With Memorial Day being on a Monday, that's not going to happen anymore in the Midwest League.
Yeah, the league-wide off day, which comes on Mondays because the schedule built much like it was coming out of COVID. In fact, everybody seemed to like it so well. And the idea when they switched to this schedule, instead of having 3-game series and then busing midweek, they thought it was really nice that when a team gets situated in a town in their hotel, that they just stay and play 6 games. And so we had a change of schedule the year after COVID, which was the year there was no season. And that's kind of stuck. So we still have that 6-game schedule. Now, this is a different situation because the Friday through Sunday is a 3-game series, and they'll have another 3-game series against Lansing coming up later. I think it will, I'm not sure if that'll be, the end of the first half or when that will actually fall, that they'll make up the other 3 games. But the bottom line is you don't see the 3 games hardly at all during the course of the season. Everything's pretty much built around 6-game series, Tuesday through Sunday.
The TinCaps will be in Lansing, I believe, in about 3 weeks. And they'll have a 6-game series then. But to go back to that breakup, and you were talking about it with Mike Nutter earlier in the program, this is going to be the first time since Parkview Field opened up 16 years ago that there will be no TinCap baseball on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And the way the setup is that the TinCaps will be home to Lansing on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, but then they'll go up to Lansing and play on the 4th, 5th, and 6th.
That's how they split now, because what they've done is they've made sure every team in the league is home either July 3rd or July 4th. And the TinCaps were always able to work it out that they had the home game on the 4th. Major League Baseball said, no, we're going to make it even, and we're going to split it.
It didn't hurt up until 2021, where Mike Nutter was chairman of the scheduling committee in the Midwest League.
Well, and there were teams in the league, and I think there still are. There are teams that tie into their local community fireworks and some other things with July 4th that they kind of preferred the July 3rd date. And so you did have some teams that preferred July 4th, some teams that preferred July 3rd, and those were kind of locked in, and then the other teams kind of just whatever the schedule bared.
West Michigan is the prime example. Mike Nutter's best friend is Jim Jarecki, who is his counterpart with the Whitecaps. They each named their firstborn the same name, Carson. And Jim has never liked being home on the 4th of July, and one of the main reasons that he has mentioned is the fact that up in western Michigan, you're very close to Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And many families would prefer to spend that day at the lake or off the lake rather than come to a game. And but I can assure you that it'll be the biggest crowd of the year. If it is, I don't know if West Michigan's playing on the 4th of July at home this year or not. People might not realize this, but the Whitecaps have the second largest stadium seat capacity-wise in the league at over 10,000. And Lansing has the largest stadium with 11,000. And I know for a fact, talking with our colleague Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, the voice of the Lugnuts, they will pack that ballpark, Jackson Field, come 4th of July, and they'll come very close to that 11,000 figure. So I guess it depends where you're located, and as you say, what people do and what they don't like to do.
Well, you know, the one thing about it, Mike, is they had 10,000, I think, last year on the 3rd at Lansing. But, you know, the other part of it, and I think we'll see what happens with the TinCaps, I don't know that it will hurt not having the 4th. I think we've become so accustomed to it. But I think giving everybody in Fort Wayne that day to go celebrate the holiday however they so choose, so they don't have to worry about, oh, we've got to get back from the lake because we've got a TinCaps game to get to. But, you know, on the 4th, a lot of people have to work on the 5th.
Yeah.
if you have it on the 3rd, you can stay out all night because you don't have to work on the 4th, right? Well, maybe not for you, but for a lot of people, you can stay out extra late because you don't have to get up and the alarm clock doesn't get you early in the morning. So there's that advantage to it as well.
In Fort Wayne, I think what's going to be most interesting, we have been spoiled not only by having a game on the 4th of July here at Parkview Field, but the city of Fort Wayne has their annual 4th of July fireworks extravaganza, which takes place on top of the Indiana-Michigan Power Building that we're looking at from behind home plate. And that building is the tallest building in the city of Fort Wayne, and I believe it is the 5th or 6th tallest building in the entire state of Indiana. And this, we talk about Fort Wayne, you've got the surrounding areas that it's become a rite of passage. Mm-hmm. That's where families can get together. Maybe they've had the good day or the traveling and they've had the family cookout or whatever, but they've always known that come 9:30 or 9:45 on the night of the 4th of July, they can congregate downtown and they can watch a beautiful fireworks display. And what is the bonus on that is the fact that you get people who have no idea who someone they're going to run into is all about. They may well never have met him before, and yet everybody will be in a festive mood and an enjoyable mood. And for one night, the town and the area comes together in terms of happiness, and for a few hours at least, they can get rid of some of the problems that exist all over the place.
Down to about our last minute here, Mike, and I want to ask you real quick because you've been very blessed to be in this booth with some guys in this seat that I'm in right now, and I will gladly get up here when we finish the show and allow Jaden Taylor his opportunity to prepare for the game. But what a long line of just terrific broadcasters that you've had the opportunity to share this booth with.
We, being the TinCaps, started this broadcast intern program in 2012. Mike Cousins came to town. A lot of people may not remember that in 2011, Mike Cousins was an intern with the Dayton Dragons and Tom Nichols. And then the opening came up, and I don't mind losing to Mike for that position. Look where he's at today. He went from the TinCaps to the Big Ten Network. He's with ESPN, and he does. The rumor I'm hearing is that the people at ESPN are perhaps grooming him, possibly, if they keep a package, be it audio package, to be the radio voice of Sunday Night Baseball sooner rather than later. But Mike, he went, and in 2013, oh, by the way, the intern that was there in 2012 was a guy by the name of Tom Felice, who went to the same school as Vin Scully. Tom is not in baseball professionally, but he does a lot of high school and college sports back in New England. And then you've got John Nolan that came here in 2013. You've got, and I'll just go in not alphabetical order. You've got Jack McMullen was here in 2021. Today, Jack is the radio voice of the Miami Marlins. And you have Ben Schulman here is here in 2022. He is in his second year as the lead broadcaster on radio for the Toronto Blue Jays. On rare occasion, he fills in for Dad, Dan, if Dan has another commitment on the TV side. You've got Mike Monaco, who has been a gem. He's become a dear friend of mine. He also went from being an intern here in 2016, going first to the Big Ten Network. He now is at ESPN, and he is a regular staple on the TV side for both the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City and the Men's College World Series in Omaha.
And the Little League World Series. And the NHL, because I heard him call an NHL game earlier this week.
So I made a post after a Major League opening like last week, and I know I'm talking too long, and I'll try to cut it down. It was so good to hear these voices. Mike Cousins had the Dodger-Tiger game from Dodger Stadium on ESPN Radio. You had Ben Schulman with the opener, even though the Jays got beat by Baltimore 5-2. You had Jack McMullen doing his debut with the Marlins. And
on a walk-off.
Yeah. and we know Mike Monaco is going to be around for a good chunk of the season one way or another. Those four have utilized what they've learned here and I'm not going to take the credit for being their teacher. I take credit for trying to learn from them and give them what 1% I know about broadcasting. But to see where these people have gone, you mentioned a couple of others. Michael Tricarico is at AAA Syracuse. Evan Stockton was with him the last 3 years. And Evan has gone back to Detroit. And Jack Gordon, who was here last year, is now Tricky's partner.
In AAA.
At AAA. And those are just some of the guys. We have been blessed, and I have been on record. I will match our intern program here in Fort Wayne with the TinCaps with any sports team or sports league, period, around the country, because success breeds success. Yes, thank you, Syracuse University. But there have been quality kids, quality people that have come here and have learned some more about how to broadcast. And I'm just tickled pink the fact that I've had the great fortune to work with these people, and I'm seeing them, if not totally, at least partially, realize their dreams of getting to go to the mountaintop in sports broadcasting.
We got to take a quick break. Best of luck with the season, Mike, and we're going to come back, wrap it up next. This is the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Little gray downtown right now, but we're still keeping our fingers crossed as they are rolling up the tarp that they had out there for batting practice. There's no tarp on the field, and so that means Keith Winter's pretty confident at this point that we're not going to get some precipitation, and it looks like we are on a path to baseball tonight. Of course, TinCaps will open up the season at 7:05 against the Lansing Lugnuts, and as you can all season long, you can listen to the play-by-play right here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. I want to thank all the guests that joined us out here at Parkview Field, including Mike Nutter, TinCaps president, Brian Shacko, who not only handles all the finance here with the TinCaps, but also in charge of some food, beverage, and concessions. Also, it was great to visit with Jaden Taylor, the new broadcaster for the TinCaps. Equally as enjoyable to visit with the longtime broadcaster Mike Maahs as well. Big thanks to Adam Lundy back in the studio. I am Brett Rump. Enjoy your sports weekend. Enjoy a lot of college basketball and hopefully enjoy some TinCaps baseball. Live from Parkview Field, this has been the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.